All right, folks, welcome to this month's One Thing webinar. This is Jay Papazan. I'm going to be your host. I am super excited about our guest today, Rachel Hollis. I'm going to be chatting with her for the next hour, and we will talk about her new book, Girls Stop Apologizing. We will then save time at the end for your questions. So definitely check out the questions toolbar, and we will be using that to take your questions and field them in order of priority. But I'm just super excited right now to chat with Rachel. So I'm going to now adjust this and tell me really quickly, can you see Rachel and I on the screen? If you can, type yes into the questions bar. I see yes. Yay! Technology did not defeat us today. All right, Rachel, I'm ready to go. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me.
I just love this. I've been a fan of you from afar. Some of our super fans, right? Madeline Ellis in Louisiana was one of the first people to point out to me that after maybe Brene Brown, like you were right at the top of her list. And she's been posting about this, and I've met with her multiple times when I've been there. And I just can't tell you, so many of people in our community have just said, wow, this is someone special. So I love that we're coming together. And I want to thank you. I read your book last night and today. And my wife had great fun taking pictures and posting them on Facebook of me with my reading glasses, reading your beautiful cover book. You have the best covers, by the
way. Nice, thank you.
And I'm going to give you some appreciation just to start this off. One, thank you for giving a shout out to our book at the end. Love that we're mutual fans. And also, like, I'm a father, I'm a daughter, and your message of agency, your message of accountability, right, that we control our own outcomes, it's wonderfully refreshing. I believe in it wholeheartedly, so I'm just so happy to chat with you about that. And you know, you keep changing the world. We'll be a part of that today, but I really love your message. As a father of a daughter that wants to see the world be different, thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Well, it boggles the mind, right, that people might not know who you are, because to me, you're a small town girl who's now kind of a phenomenon, to be honest. Like, I mean, you're up there. Tell us really quickly, for those who aren't familiar with your story, a little bit about what that journey looked like and how you became the author of your latest best-selling book.
Yeah, so I grew up in a town called Bakersfield, California, which is about 2 hours north of LA, and is very much like you picked up West Texas and dropped it into Southern California. So big farming town, agriculture, not the kind of place that was where I wanted to stay. I actually graduated high school a year early so that I could get out of town quicker. Moved to LA at 17 and went to go to school. I went to an acting conservatory because I thought I was going to be an actress. And okay. I got an internship at Miramax Films, which was, you know, in 2001, the production company to work at if you wanted to make movies that would maybe someday be nominated for an Oscar. It was an abysmal working environment, super abusive, insane hours, no money. But, you know, I was a young woman and I didn't know that there was another way to be. I think sometimes that's a gift. I don't know if you've ever had a job like that, Jay, but like when you're younger and you like got to get the copies and, you know, make coffee and stay late and answer the phones and do all those things while someone's screaming at you, it's never how I would manage a team today. But I'm so grateful for those years because, my gosh, they taught me hustle. They taught me not to take no for an answer. They taught me that there was always a way because you were never going to tell your boss no. You know, like you were going to find a way to get the thing to work. So really grateful for that time. And in that experience, I had the opportunity to work movie premieres and press junkets and the Academy Awards after parties. And I was this little country mouse, like legitimately grew up out in the country. And all of a sudden I'm at a party with George Clooney and Matt Damon and Brad Pitt. And I'm thinking, this is the most glamorous thing that could ever happen to me in my whole life. I'm wearing my Payless shoes and my sister's like hand-me-down dress, and this is so fancy. And I decided I wanted to be an event.
Is George Clooney tall or short? Because I always find out they're really short in person.
he's not that short, and he is as
Okay.
handsome and dazzling as you want and need him to be. He like
There we
you
go.
see him, men and women, and even the men, the straight men are like, I get
I'm
it,
just
I
like,
get
you go
it.
after it. Yeah.
Right? So I had this opportunity to do events and I really loved it. And so I started to dream about what it would be to own my own event planning company. And I was in LA. Southern California is one of the top places to have a wedding in the entire world. And so I knew if I wanted to be in events, that the easiest thing for me to do would be wedding planning. And I kept my day job and then worked nights and weekends, learning the events industry, learning how to grow business. And then, like most things in my life, I just, one day took a flying leap and decided to start my own firm. And I'm a big believer that you jump into the deep end, you learn how to swim once you get there. And I did that with the events firm, and I just
Were
hustled.
you
Like
already
I
married at this point?
um,
Had you
yeah,
already met
yeah.
Dave?
So when I finally, my husband actually worked for Disney, and Disney owned the production company where I work, so that's how we met.
Okay. There we go. I
I,
figured as much. I
yeah,
didn't know for sure.
yeah. And so the very first year we were married was when I decided to leave my real job and start my business. And I made $38,000 a year at the time. And my only mission was I just wanted to make at least $38,000 a year. That was all I cared about. Was I just didn't want, we were young, we didn't have money, and I didn't want him to have to carry the burden of this thing. So I did events for like most people when you're first starting out, you're like, do you have $5 in a bucket of chicken? I will do an event for you. Like you just want the experience and you want you want all the things. So I did that, and over several years, I built the event planning company up to be one of the most predominant high-end event planning companies, particularly for personal events, so weddings, bar mitzvahs. Got to do a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry, and did that for a long time, and sort of had reached like what I used to imagine. Like I had the fancy office where a valet took my keys, and I was so cool, and I got to, whatever. Really miserable, didn't like it. Had done it for a long time. Events, especially in LA, are hard. Bridezilla is a real thing. And started to dream about what might be next. And this was 2008, and everyone was starting a blog, and I didn't know what that was, but I was like, well, dang it. Everyone kept saying, start a blog, it's free marketing. And I was like, okay. So I started a blog, and it was just the worst thing you've ever, even my mom was like, I don't have time for this.
You wrote about it, like in the beginning,
Yeah,
you're describing your food.
right?
It was like the
Yeah,
way people like tried to learn Instagram in the beginning. Here's my cheese.
totally. Everybody sucks in the beginning, and I was no exception. And honestly, I was actually in a meeting one day at work, and there was someone on our team, an intern, who was like, excuse me, do you know that a blog is supposed to be about something specific? And I was like, I did not know that. Thank you so much. So I started this blog, slowly grew it to, I actually started as a food blogger, if you can believe it. It was the thing that I knew how to do. And so I would teach women, hey, here's a recipe that I know how to make. And I didn't know how to take pretty pictures of food, but I know how to cook. So I got in that space. I got a little bit of a following, kind of kept building it, and eventually would grow that and scale that into a lifestyle website with a staff in LA. And we did influencer marketing, and we did white label content. We had this great company. And what I always think is so interesting is that the tagline for the business back then is the same as the tagline is today, which is crazy. So the tagline has always been, give women the tools to change their life.
I
But
love that.
isn't that crazy? But like years ago,
Truth was there the whole time.
the only tool I had was a casserole recipe. That was like literally, I had 2 toddlers, and I was like, if you could get your kids to eat some broccoli, that might help them. So the only tool I had to give you was where I was at in my life. And as I have grown as a woman, as I have grown as an entrepreneur and a mama and a wife, that was when the tools in my toolkit grew as well, and I was able to offer women something that was more substantive. So today, I'm the founder of the Hollis Company, which my husband stole him from Disney about a year ago, and we joined forces. We're based in Austin, Texas, and we create media that helps women to change their life. So that looks like movies, that looks like live events, that looks like books. I'm probably most well known for a book that came out last year called Girl Wash Your Face. And then the follow-up book that we're talking about today is Girl Stop Apologizing. But here we are. And I think what's probably valuable, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are watching right now, what's probably valuable and what I love for y'all to know as we have this conversation is I have a high school diploma. So I moved to LA and I promptly dropped out of college. So I have a high school diploma. Every single thing I know about being an entrepreneur, being a writer, all of it, I taught myself. So I am a firm believer that there's like nothing that you can't learn how to do, especially when it comes to your business. Literally every single thing you want to know how to do exists in a book, exists on a podcast, exists in a YouTube video or a Google search bar. I am passionate about the idea that there's so much free information out there. And the question is not, can you find the answer? The question is, are you willing to do the work once you know what the answer is?
I love that. And one of my favorite parts of the book, it's kind of, I can't remember the chapter because I haven't memorized your book yet, right? But you talked about you were growing as a business person, right? And you, like a lot of new business people, like you just ignored this thing called a P&L and a balance sheet. What's that about, right? And it created fear in your heart, all of those things. And you went as far as to take like a Harvard business course.
I tried everything.
That you aced in terms of the test, but taught you nothing.
Yeah.
But then you found something that actually met you where you were, right? You did some YouTubes, but then you found Keith Cunningham.
Yes.
Another awesome night, by the way.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So for me, it was this realization that like personal development is supposed to be personal. It's supposed to be what works for you. And I don't learn very well in a typical classroom environment. I learn by doing, I learn by reading, there was a very specific way that I had learned and grown in my business. And when I came up against one of the biggest problems I had ever had as an entrepreneur, which was how do I get a hold of our finances? I started to approach it the way other people did and had no success. And I had to go back to what works for me. And where I really had a breakthrough was where I've had a breakthrough many times in my life, at a conference. I am like such a passionate, it's why we have conferences. I am so passionate about what happens for an entrepreneur or a person when they go and kind of envelop themselves in a way of thinking. And so I was at a business conference and I got to see Keith speak, and he has incredible books. If you guys haven't read Keith Cunningham, you totally should. But he talked, it wasn't called this, but it was basically like business finance for dummies. And I sat in the front row while he explained a balance sheet, and I bawled my eyeballs out, like just sobbing. And I'm sure that he was like, who is this crazy person? But it was the first time in my life that I understood that piece of my business. And dude, this is an epidemic in the business space, because when I'm speaking, I have the opportunity to speak, several times a month, and I'm speaking typically to entrepreneurs and small business owners. And when I challenge the audience, I'm like, who in this room really knows their business finances? Who really knows where they are, what their cash flow is, what they've got? Who really knows? You might have 2,000 people in a room and 3 people raise their hand. Because it's this thing where if you're like me, you're like, as long as I have money to make payroll, but you really can't scale and grow a business if you don't understand costs, if you don't understand margin, if you don't have that piece, it doesn't matter how much is coming in, because you don't know where it's all going. So learning that piece of the puzzle was like everything for me.
One of the more influential moments in my business career, 2000, my first year with Keller Williams, I've been here for like 18 years. Our then CEO, Mo Anderson, Oklahoman like yourself, and amazing businesswoman. I showed up for a class on how to read a balance sheet. Every employee had to learn it because our franchisees had to do it. And I was the only student. She's the CEO of our company. And she could have said, let's reschedule. She said, oh, goody. Instead of a class, we get to have a coaching session.
Oh, wow.
Sat down with me for an hour and taught me how to read a balance sheet, made me go home and do one with my wife, and it was our first net worth sheet.
How
And
cool.
I get goosebumps thinking about it, but it's such a fundamental lesson. And I got lucky. I
Yeah.
walked into the right room on the right Wednesday morning, and Mo Anderson was on the other side. And what an
Yeah.
opportunity for other aspiring business people to have to discover you talked about putting the personal in personal growth. There are lots of ways we can learn this. Find your way, but understand that if you want to be in business, it is one of those things that you need to learn sooner than later to be really
Yeah.
successful and achieve your dreams.
Yeah. Well, I think this is, I mean, you're the perfect person to talk about this too. But I think one of the things I try and encourage students or people that I'm, talking to when I do keynotes is what are like, what's the one thing, right? What's the thing that you really need most? Because what entrepreneurs do too often is they go to a conference and they get so much information that now you're like, squirrel, like there's so many things to do that you'll chase it all, which means that you have no real, like you're not making any traction. You're not really focusing in on what matters most, what's going to move the needle of this business. And so it's so important to understand, like have that self-awareness. Where am I really falling short? One of the most powerful things I ever heard at a business conference was every single problem in a business is the result of the psychology at the top. Every single problem in a business is the result of the psychology at the top, either because that leader doesn't have the skill set to manage the team well, or because that leader has put someone in a position of power below her who doesn't have the ability to manage it well. But either way, it's on the leader. And when you hear that, a lot of people will feel shame. They'll be like, oh, I knew it. I knew that I was failing in this way. But I heard it and I felt empowered, because if you're the problem, you're also the solution.
That's
so
right.
If I can identify what it is, okay, yeah, we have gone from 4 employees to 29 employees in 8 months. This is like we're building a plane as we're flying. It's a rush, right? Right now, there's 100 different things I could walk out of my office door and try and go accomplish. But what actually matters, what's the one thing? I love that I'm having this conversation with you. This is tripping me out. But what's the one thing that's really going to move it in the direction that it needs to go? That's where you start with.
When you say all that, I learned that. I know that you've probably read this because you acknowledged this leader in your acknowledgments. You talked about John Maxwell being one of the mentors that's inspired you. I love that little section where you honored the people who were part of your journey.
Yeah.
But the 21 immutable laws of leadership, the only one I always remember is the law of the lid.
Yes, that's what everybody remembers.
Right, it's the lid. And if you're the leader of the organization, you're also the lid on it. But I love what you just said. You also then, if you're committed to growth, you can be raising that lid on a daily basis.
Yes.
And one of the ways you do that is one thing at a time, right? Where do I most need to invest my time and resources so that we can grow together?
Yeah, I love that. It has been, I mean, if there are people watching who are familiar with my brand and the work that our company does, we have these journals. It's called the Start Today Journal. It was based on this practice that I did forever. But so much of even that idea is about, for a lot of women, at least in my community, I don't know if everyone feels like this, but for a lot of women especially, they haven't really envisioned where they're going. They sort of don't have that like 5-year plan, 10-year plan. They don't know where they're going. So even the idea of in the book, I like, it feels like this is an ad for the book, and it's not. You just like, I am a huge fan of this book, even before we met. But this idea of, okay, in order for that dream to be made real, in order for that to be made manifest, what are the things that are going to get you there fastest? Because a lot of things could move you in a direction, but what are the things that are really going to elevate so that you know what to focus on? Because I do think, like, so many people will tell me, like, Rachel, I am working so hard. I'm working so hard. I'm putting in these hours. I'm doing this thing, but I'm not seeing any traction. I'm not seeing any. And it's like, yeah, because you're wasting time on the wrong stuff. Your email box is at 0, but you have no, revenue coming in. Because you're like, you're focusing on a to-do list instead of the results that you actually need.
I love that part of the book. So we're jumping now. We're getting back in. Remember the book? Someone asked, "What's the name of the book?" Girls Stop Apologizing. It's showing up in reverse. So hopefully you can read upside down and in reverse. Um, but towards the end, you talk about planning, and that's one of the places where our book and your book really align. And I love it because you talk about it's a roadmap, and you
Yes.
talked about trying to find your hotel in Amsterdam, then realizing you're not in Amsterdam, which sounds like a complete jet lag nightmare to me.
Yes, totally.
But funny today. But this idea of you start with the destination, right? Identify where you are. And what I think you're talking about now is identifying those milestones along the way. And we talk about that in the frame of goal setting to the now. It's you've got a 10-year goal. You've got this dream of being a best-selling author or a business owner, whatever that is. And if you focus on the next milestone, you can really get into action. And you kind of talked about like that milestone is not about creating a Pinterest board about all the things you can do. It's about taking action.
Yes,
So,
yeah. Well, yeah, so the example that I always use for people is writing a book. I'm sure you get this too. Like people know you write a book and then everyone's like, oh, I've always wanted to write a book. I had an idea.
Everybody tells me I should write a book.
And the thing is, lots of people start writing a book. Very few people actually finish writing a book. And so when you think about writing a book, you could come at it in 50 different ways. You could talk to authors, you could brainstorm, you could imagine what the cover is going to look like, you could read books on writing. But at the end of the day, if you want to write a book, what's the one thing you actually have to do? You got to write the words. You got to write the words. And the thing is, people know, like even you know that that's the truth. The reason that we skirt the issue, the reason that we focus on that to-do list, the reason that we empty the email inbox instead of actually going and doing output is because this thing is easy. This is something, you know, I can knock this out and feel accomplished because I got my emails down, but it didn't actually do anything to take me further. And so what I would say to the people who are watching this right now is you have to have a really honest, a really honest conversation with yourself about what am I not doing that I should be? What am I not, look, what am I not actively pursuing? How am I not writing the words when I should be? How am I not, like, if it takes 100, phone calls to get 10 people to sign up, well, then I need to be, what does it look like in my life if I did 150 a day? Like, you need to really ask yourself the question, dude, this is hard work. This is hard. It's like, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody's not doing it for a reason. It's hard, but it also, to me, what I love about business is I think business is like, it's like an equation. And once you figure out the equation, I push this button, I pull this lever, we do these things. Once you figure out how to talk to an audience, serve a consumer, you can do it for anything. It's like once you figure out the equation, man, you're cooking with gas. And as long as you're not an idiot, and as long as you have servant's heart, you continue to do good work, it's incredible what you can accomplish. But getting from where you are to that place where you figured it out, that's going to be a slog. That's going to be some hard work in between here and there. But man, is it worth it.
I love it. And thank you for acknowledging, like, you got to do the work, right? We all love to dream about the outcomes, but there's actually work between those two. And I've also kind of experienced this, and you talk about this earlier in the book. I think another reason people avoid actually putting words on the page is because if they actually start taking action, they might find out that they're not going to succeed, that they might fail. If they actually try, they fail. And I think people worry too much about failing instead of failing to success. And so I know that you've got a lot of experience with that and you're very transparent. So what are your thoughts on failure and whether it should be avoided or not?
I just did not know that there was any other way to get to success except through just a landmine riddled valley of failure. Like I really, maybe it's because I grew up a really difficult childhood and just like all of that I just thought, I just knew from a very early age that life was hard. I just knew that was true. And so it never, like really never occurred to me that I would achieve anything without failing. And so it's actually something that I've had to really dig into how to teach and how to talk to my community about, because it's not something I worry about. Like I fail all the time. You're going to watch me fail 100 times more. Like, and I fail on a big scale. Back when nobody knew who I was, it didn't matter. Now you've got a wider audience, you've got a bigger community. Now you're failing in front of millions of people instead of in front of your mom and your husband. So for me, we have got to get over this fear of failure. Failure is a part of it. Failure
Right.
is the price of admission. And what I keep asking people when they tell me that they're afraid to fail, I'm like, you're not afraid to fail. You're afraid of them watching you fail. This
Hmm.
is not about being scared. This is about your ego. This is
Yeah.
you feeling like looking at a social media world and thinking that you've got to have it perfect or it's not worth trying at all. It's like, please do not compare your beginning with someone else's middle. Like this, like my career, the books, the whatever. I love to remind people, Girl Wash Your Face came out last year, sold a bajillion copies. Everyone loves it. Yippee. It was my 6th book.
Right.
6th. Which means there
Yep.
were 5 books before that one that nobody cared about. Nobody. And everyone's, doing press for the new book. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, are you so excited to have a 2nd book? I'm like, girl. In fact, this was the 8th because I wrote a cookbook in between, which is a whole other story. But it's like, this is just a part of it. The other thing I feel like is just like, get over yourself. Stop being so precious. Stop just decide that this is going to be what it is. You want that dream, you want that vision that you have of your life. Just plan that this is what is going to happen between where you are and where you want to go. And also just encouraging you guys to get as passionate about the journey, get as passionate about making a little bit of like, oh, I moved forward an inch, celebrate the crap out of that. Because your goal might be a decade away. Where I am
Right.
right now, this is 15 years of entrepreneurship, 15 years. So like
Oh,
what,
come on. You're an overnight success, right?
oh yeah, totally. It's like, this could be so far from now. What are you going to waste your life? You're going to miss everything. Or what's more likely to happen, you're going to walk away from a good idea, from good intention, from a good business, because it's not happening fast enough because you have some distorted idea of what this is supposed to be. Failure is a part of this. Failure is a part of life. It's about part of business. You need to be okay with falling. You need to be okay with sucking. Like, this is the other thing is like, are you humble enough to be awful? Are you humble enough to put your work out there when it's not very good? You go back and read my first book, Jesus Take the Wheel. I mean, it's a monster. I mean, like if I didn't do the first book, there isn't a 6th book.
Right.
The first YouTube videos I'm sure your first webinar was abysmal. Like,
No.
this is the process, you guys.
I had a good advice I got. I can't even remember where the source is. So I'll just say it's from my wife, right? Because usually that's where it comes from. But if you go out and you look up the first episode of Seinfeld, right, the most popular comedy of all time, right? Absolutely marvelous. You watch that first episode, actually most of the first season, all the characters are there, but it's not Seinfeld yet.
Out there, yeah.
Even they had to figure it out, and it took them almost a whole season for the magic to kick in. So I think people, they see you, they think it's your first book. No, it's actually my 6th. And
Yeah,
we talked about that they caught you at the elbow of the hockey stick, and they don't
totally.
realize that all of those years came before it, and that creates unrealistic expectations. So one, I love that you're just being honest. You told the story of that person, super successful, not really owning all the leverage they had around them, saying they were just so organized.
Yep,
That's a
yep,
disservice. And
yep.
so when you're being truthful about your journey really helps all of us.
Yes. The other thing that I think is interesting that I didn't understand, and I wonder if you would say the same thing, I work harder today than I ever have in my life. I don't do the same work I did 15 years ago, but I work harder today because every time you get to a new level in your business, new levels, new devils. There's new stuff, there's new opportunity, we got to figure things out. We have a bigger team. Like, I used to think as a young entrepreneur that like you got to a certain place and then suddenly it got easier and you just kind of like stood on your throne and said, like, you pointed at things and then a business happened. And honestly, all of the entrepreneurs I know, all of my mentors, all of my friends they would tell you the same thing. John Maxwell is a dear mentor of mine. He is working harder at his age than any of us ever will, and doing it with more heart and with more intentionality than any of us could hope for. It is not like it. I don't know. I just want that truth to be there too, so that if you keep growing in your business and you're like, man, I thought that this was gonna be easier, or I thought this was gonna be less stressful. That's also not true. I think you learn to manage it better. I think that you get better support, and maybe now you're not worried about how you're going to pay rent or how you're going to make payroll, but also don't buy into the lie that once you get to a certain place, it's like, oh, and we're done, and now it's not hard anymore.
I've observed that in my own life and the people that I've studied, for sure. And it's almost 22 months now, I've been writing a monthly newsletter, which is kind of my act of journaling, because I'm a very forward-facing individual, right? I'm always like, what's next? What's next? And this forced me to go, what did I do this month, and share it with my friends.
Yeah.
And the first reactions from so many of them were, y'all do so much. And I wasn't aware of it, because we've been on this journey, Wendy and I, for a long time. And I think that when you take this journey, because you're growing, you don't realize how much more you're doing. Your muscles actually are stronger. Yeah, I think we're working harder. I think we're accomplishing more, but we're also stronger. We're better capable of dealing with it. And my wife yesterday, she's driving back from Houston teaching, and she got behind a gravel truck, and we need a new windshield. I go back 18 years, and that was like the worst day of our month.
Yes, yeah, yes.
Oh my gosh, I've just had the worst week, my windshield, right? And it wasn't just that was a financial hardship. It's still expensive.
Yeah.
But because on the journey to going big, right? And that journey, you get stronger, you also get more resilient.
Yeah.
So I back up everything that you're saying tenfold, but it always shocks me when I look up and go, yeah, we are accomplishing more. But I think, I'll ask you this. You're a parent of 4, right? I've got a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I have new parents ask me, does it get easier? I don't think it does. I think it changes. There's new delights.
Yeah,
but I think it actually stays, it might even be more challenging the older they get. It's more work as a parent, but I also have more love and more enjoyment.
Yeah, I think that certain things change. Like, one of the things I'm like holding on to so desperately, looking forward to, is I think about 4 years old is when they can sit with an iPad on a plane. That is what I am holding out for. Like, that's what I'm going for. My daughter is 2, and she is a handful, like the greatest handful you've ever met in your entire life. And we love a family vacation, and specifically we love a family vacation in Hawaii, which is about an 8-hour flight from Texas. So we're like, oh, in 2 more years.
You're going up and down the aisle, walking her, you're still doing that? Oh, yeah.
Exactly right. But what happens is, with the older, my 12-year-old is in middle school, and there's an emotional thing that happens that's, totally unlike toddler years, where I'm so much more nervous and concerned for him as he navigates the water of, this kid said this, and this friend is, and if you have older kids too, I can't even imagine with girls. I mean, I feel like the boys are dramatic enough. I can't even imagine teenage daughters. But then you're also navigating, like, them having phones and them having access to the things other kids say. And so just all of that, I don't know if I definitely think it gets more enjoyable for me. I love being a mama of older kids. I truthfully, just from my heart, I am not a baby toddler mom. It's not my jam. I love them. Take care of them.
Poop.
Yeah. Keep them alive. I'll keep them alive. But I'm not one of those moms that's just like, oh, my baby. I'm like, can you go to the bathroom by yourself? That's what I'm looking for. It doesn't matter, every season of your life. I was talking with a girlfriend about this yesterday. My husband and I, next week, I should have 2 weeks from now, we'll celebrate our 15-year anniversary of our marriage.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we were saying, like, isn't it crazy that you still have hard seasons together. Like,
Yeah.
didn't you think, am I the only one that thought that we would like get to a stage and then high five and just like roll on into retirement as a happy couple, no more problems? Like, it's like you'll get this area of your life down and really be killing it, and oh, this thing pops up. Like, it's never not work to be in, like, to have an exceptional relationship, which is our intent, is always going to be effort. It's always going to have to be communication. We're always going to have to dig in and do the hard work and talk about the thing that hurt our feelings and whatever. But I just find it so interesting, because somewhere along the way, I really thought we'd have this down by now, and we definitely do not.
Nope. I had the same experience like last night with my wife when we were coordinating our calendars. I was like, "You're going to be in Delaware next week?" It's like, okay, I thought we had this part down, but we're growing, we're evolving. And that means we have to always be adjusting the scales. What worked last year has to be adjusted this year. And I would just say, yeah, it is more work. It's even more fulfilling the longer you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're more in love today and stronger today than we ever have been in our life, which is not something I could have told you either. Surviving a year of working together, whoo, like, that's like a master class. Like, okay, it's one thing if you can be married to each other and have 4 kids and still want to make out and still be laughing and going on dates. Add in working together, someone should give us an award. I don't know who, but somebody should.
I want to attack that really quickly, because I know that we have some real estate people on this, and one of the most common teams in real estate is a husband team. And
interesting.
So if you gave them one piece of advice, what would you give them so that they can be successful at work and in their marriage?
I feel like I could, the one thing. So I feel like I could offer all kinds of like pithy, whatever, the stuff you read in books. But truthfully, what has helped me most was years ago, I was a wedding planner. So I would hear some, like, when pastors would marry a couple, you hear these things. And one thing that I heard in counseling or something along the way was, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? So when it came to a relationship, was this idea like, but he said this and I know, it's like, yeah. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Because happy looks like you letting down, letting that ego drop, stop being so full of yourself. Like, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And when we decided to join forces, I truthfully was struggling so much. I knew I needed help. I couldn't continue to do it by myself because I'm the face of the brand. And then also I was the founder and CEO, and I was really struggling with CEO stuff. And he was coming on board, and I had this crazy fear. I was like, I've been working on this business at the time for 14 years. And I knew that we were right on the tipping point. Like, I really knew it in my gut. I was like, this is about to explode. I've been working on it forever. This is about to explode. And my fear was that he was going to come on board, the business is going to explode, and then everyone is going to say it's because he joined in and not because of the work that I did. And so I carried so much around. And then I was talking to Christy Wright, who's at the Ramsey organization, who's a good friend of mine. And she was counseling me through this. And she was like, girl, this is your ego. This is your pride. Like, this is not about what's best for your business or your marriage. What do you care if strangers think? Like, what do you care? Do you want to be right? Do you want to do what's best for you and your ego, or do you want to be happy? Do you want the business to flourish and grow? And so, it's not even like business advice. It's more just do what's right for the business. Do what's right for the relationship. Do what's right for joy and growth, and like get the pride out of the way. Because in talking to other couples who work together over the last year, that is the thing that I hear the most, and I don't know if you'd agree, is that pride is what will knock both people off course. Because you think that you did that, and she thinks that she did this, and the reality is none of it matters, because we should be working towards a common goal.
Love that. I love that answer. We have a saying in our organization, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship? That's a fun thing to talk to your teenage kids around when they're digging in. And I'm like, dearest daughter, dearest son, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship?
Yeah.
And that's one of those great questions that gets people refocused on what they're trying to be, right? Their pride's getting in the way. Um,
Yes.
the other thing that I think you probably have worked out that I would just say, if there was a second thing that I've seen and observed, is you talked about the importance of communication with your husband. I think clearly saying who's in charge of what and
Yeah.
being very clear. So
Yes.
my wife is very clear and I'm very clear. She's running our real estate team and I get to be advisor when I'm invited to be an advisor. I own
Yeah.
the team too, but I have a role, and my role is to be an advisor and to be essentially a board member.
Yes.
She's the CEO,
Hmm.
and in my publishing company, it goes the other direction. And as long as we're clear about our roles and responsibilities,
That's so good.
that communication takes care of a lot.
Yeah, that's so good. I would say if you had asked my husband, he would have given that advice is stay in your lane. What is your lane? That's the thing. He's CEO, he's managing the operational side of things. I am creative. I'm the chief creative officer. Like I am the content. How does it look? How does it feel? But not stepping on each other's toes so that one person can totally own that. Yes, we'd love to have you in and give your opinion here, but knowing that this is not your place to be part of, for sure, for sure.
You said something earlier. I've just got to go back. That first year, you said you wanted to make 38,000. Did you make
I
38,000 or
did. I made
300,000?
$38,900. Watch out, everybody. Watch out.
I love it. I love it. I just had to check on that. That's been writing there. But you talked about like I want to be a parent of older kids, right? That's a deep honesty. It's not a popular opinion. Some people might even be offended by it.
Yeah.
But when I think about the themes, like girls stop apologizing, you're not apologizing for that. That's
Yeah.
just who you are.
Totally.
And the thing that I didn't know about, and being a husband to my wife, she stayed at home for 5.5 years to help get our kids out of the nest.
Mhm.
She left her profession to do it. It was something that we were able to do. And she was just very clear, like she also wanted to be a business owner.
Yeah.
And so the competition, the mom guilt thing, I never had heard of. And I had no idea that as much of it comes from the guy's side of the fence, right? The mom guilt definitely shows up there. I couldn't believe how much enforcement showed up from women saying bad things to each other. So
Absolutely.
this book, if you deal with mom guilt, there's so much wisdom in here. Talk to us a little bit about how you make that journey from getting past caring about what other people think about your choices and just owning your choices because they are who you are.
Yeah. So I think just to give you like a little bit of a reference point on that, I carried so much shame, not even guilt, shame, when my
Ugh.
children were younger because I didn't like it. I didn't like being a mom. I loved my babies, but I was like, this is the worst. Like all day I'm just changing diapers and like it was the worst. It wasn't the thing that like it wasn't my thing. But I never said that to anybody because I just kept thinking, but a mom is supposed to love this. I was looking at my sister-in-laws I'm like, they love this. Why don't I love this? And first of all, if that's you right now, if you are feeling some of that, please know, I promise it gets better. It gets better. I promise it gets better. Because as my oldest started to get older, I really found a relationship with him. I really started, when my kids can talk, when we can have a conversation, we can read books together, that is when the relationship starts to bloom and grow into something great. And just that understanding made it so much easier for me to parent the younger kids because I was like, oh, even with my daughter, I love my daughter so much. She's a monster. She's 2, she is a monster. Cutest thing you've ever seen in your whole life, she's a monster. And I know this too shall pass. And I'm not all worked up and I'm not beating myself up because I know that this is a season in our lives. It's not forever. And so there's so many women who are carrying around guilt and shame about being a working mom or being a stay-at-home mom or, not being this or not being that or not looking a certain way. And it's like, you guys, like you are valuable and worthy and enough, like just as you are today. And that means that you cannot live your life in apology. You cannot live your life saying I'm sorry, but really for me, it wasn't about saying I'm sorry. It was how I was living. keeping my dreams quiet, playing small, not talking too loud, I don't want people to think I'm too extra or too much, or I have too much energy, or too much hair, or my nails are too big, I got too much. It's insane the amount of things that women beat themselves up over. So what I like to ask people who feel like they're struggling with mommy guilt is this: do you feel guilty about the way that you parent your children? Or do you think that other people think that you're a bad mom? Because really, when you challenge women with that, I'm like, are your kids mostly good? Like, I know that they can be jerks, and if you have boys, they probably haven't showered in a week, but like, are they mostly good kids? You're doing a good job. That's what most mamas need. You're doing a good job. That they haven't knocked off any liquor stores lately. Like, you're doing okay. Give yourself some credit for that, but also have the self-awareness to understand that the mom guilt isn't about you and your kids. It's about what you think the other moms think of you. It's about what you think your mother-in-law thinks of you, or your sisters, or whoever else is judging you because of how you're showing up. I got this question this morning. Someone was like talking about her mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, I feel so guilty, and she says I'm not doing this right, and I'm like, she got her chance. She got her chance. She raised her kids. This is your family. These are your babies. And quite honestly, maybe your mother-in-law's right. Maybe you should have put a woolen cap on your baby's head in the middle of summer, and that would have kept him safe from the flu. Maybe that's true. But this is your baby, and this is your family, and you get one chance at this life, literally one chance. And you are drowning in the weight of someone else's opinion of how you show up in it. Oh my word. Like, what a waste of time. What a waste of energy. Every single time that you allow someone else's opinion of you, or even your perception of someone else's opinion of you, to change the way you feel about yourself, you're literally handing them all of your power, all of your motivation, all of your joy. You're giving it away. We have got to stand firmly in who we are. And I think that that's practice, right? That's a habit. You have to practice that in real time. That is something that has taken me really a decade of 36 years, but also a decade of dedicated work to get to this place where I feel like every time I kind of get to a new level, I'm like, I got this. And then, a book goes crazy and someone writes an angry article about it, and I'm like, oh, I'm a terrible person. And then I have to learn again. I have to teach myself some new tricks. I have to get stronger. But at the end of the day, honestly, I'm like, you think, great, you don't like me, fine, I'm not for you. My mother-in-law doesn't, okay. I know what my values are. This is something that I would say. You have to know what your personal values are, and you have to know what your family values are. Like, if you're in a relationship or if you have kids, you have to know what your family values are. Nobody else gets an opinion here.
Right.
Just me and Dave. That's it. Nobody else gets to weigh in on what we do, or how, you were even talking about earlier, you guys, and people saying like, oh, you do so much. And I don't know, maybe I'm putting my own life on that statement, but I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. But I get it like this, like, oh, you're doing so much. Are you guys you're not tired? Are you working too hard though? Are you pushing too much? Like, that's what we get from our families.
There's your acting showing up. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
that was
right?
Good.
Thank you. But I feel like other people they only know their own reality, right? So when they see your life, they will impose their reality on what you are actually doing. And you can really easily let that sway you from the course of what it is you're trying to do, or you can just keep coming back to like, this is who I am, this is what I'm about, this is where I'm going. You get an opinion, of course you do, you're human, but I get to choose whether or not I let it permeate this skin.
To put it in our one thing language, and you said it very clearly in the saying no chapter, before you talked about saying no, you listed your 5 priorities. Mm-hmm. And when you know what you're saying yes to, saying no to this other stuff, saying no to being the room mom in preschool or whatever that is, becomes easier because you know what you said yes to. Yeah. And I want to open this up to questions, and definitely if you've got questions for Rachel, please put them in the questions box. I got a few teed up from people from Instagram. But
So I
Wendy and
can't,
I
I
went through
can't see
this.
questions. Should I be able to see questions, or are you just going to tell me what they're saying?
We're gonna curate them, and
Great,
all you have to do is listen and be your smart self.
great.
So I remember Wendy and I, we were flipping a lot of houses when our kids were small, and we were literally dragging them to these work sites, creating a safe room for them to be in. And I remember thinking, are we bad parents? And what we were doing, I don't know if it's good or bad, but what we were doing is teaching them a lesson. And we didn't know it at the time, but our kids think it's totally normal that we own a bunch of houses. So normal for them is ownership, equity, not renting, right? So there's always trade-offs. And I
Yes.
don't want to, your choices are your choices, own them. So amen to everything you just said. There's a little bit of dad guilt out there, but there is so much mom guilt. So I love this for how you addressed it head on, unapologetically. I'm sorry, I had to say that at some point. And you went head on. So definitely, I want to encourage the women in my life to listen to that message, own what your choices are, and just stop apologizing for it. You
Yeah.
don't need to. Your
Yeah.
choices are your choices. You're role modeling things for your children, your family, your friends, and you might be inspiring people you don't even know about.
Yeah, totally. Agreed.
All right, awesome. I'm going to tee off a few here. If folks are checking out, I'm just going to do a quick heads up for next month's webinar. It's going to be me and Jeff talking about our reset retreat, why we want to reset mid-year. Check in with your goals. You still got 6 months of runway. I was going to promote your Rise conference, but it sounds like you're all sold out. So get on the waiting list. Go to the holliscompany.co.com, check out all the free resources, and definitely check out this book. But let's wrap it up and get some great questions from some folks. So Geeta on Instagram, how has your one thing evolved over the different phases of your growth?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. So how I utilize one thing, how I like incorporated it. So I used to do this thing. I'm a big, I think of myself as sort of like the Cliff Notes version of all personal development, all entrepreneur, all of that. So I heard this at a conference and read this in a book and did this thing and took the one thing. And so I would start every single day writing down the 10 dreams that I had for my life. And then I heard someone say that they wrote down their dreams, but they wrote them as if they had already happened. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Because if you say, I'm going to get out of debt, I think all your brain hears is going to. And so if you say, I am debt free, well, man, that's a bold statement, and your brain's like, whoa. And so for me, I started doing this. Like I'd write down, my 10 things every day. But then I read the one thing. I swear, if I was doing any podcast, I'm not saying that I'm not kissing up. I read the one thing and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I've got to focus on one of these 10 things at a time. So my one thing has changed over time. And the irony is, I wish I had it. So I used to do this practice. I carry a spiral bound notebook everywhere. So I used to do this practice, and you can find in my old spiral bound notebooks where I would write this down. And then every time I did it, people would be like, what, okay. So I would write down all my stuff. So then I was like, oh, I read one thing, got to turn it into one thing. And then it became a journal. So we made a journal. It was a prompted journal that we do every single day. And at the bottom of it's like, what's the one thing that you're going to work on first? Referencing, I'm like, guys, this is the book. Here's the thing. And so for me, my one thing looks a little bit different now. I'll be totally honest with you, because the business is, quite frankly, achieving at such a high rate that I use the one thing as, what are the bigger goals that we need to do as a company? So right now, the new book's been out for a couple of months, and my one thing is 1 million units of this book. So every single, I don't have my journal here right now, but if I would show you how I went, okay, we're at 300,000. My one thing at the bottom will say 400,000 units of Girl Stop Apologizing. Then the next week it'll be like, okay, I got to do 450. So I use my one thing as, they're still big goals, but it's helping me to keep my eye on the prize, because now there's so many. Does that make sense? I know that's not really how it works for you guys, but that's how I use it today.
That's why we're asking you, right? We get a different perspective on it. You've clearly got a little street cred on the success factor, so
Yeah.
we can learn from you as well.
I will
Jesse,
send
actually,
you a Start Today journal, Jay.
there we go. 3 different people asked this, but I'll give it credit to Jesse. What's on your reading list right now? What's on your bedside table reading right now?
So I have, oh man, you guys, I have the craziest TBR pile ever. I got to meet David Bach recently, and I'm about to interview him for the podcast. So I'm going, he has a new book, but I'm going old school. This is what I read during lunch at work. Smart Women Finish Rich. It's an oldie but a goodie. I'm also reading The Experience Economy, which is so good. So good. Have you read that one?
I have. Did David Bach write The Automatic Millionaire way back in the day? Is that him? Am I confusing him with someone else?
Smart Women Finish Rich, Smart Couples Finish Rich, and his new book's called The Latte Factor.
Got it. The Latte Factor. That's the same guy. I quote that all the time. Yes.
Yeah. So, and he's fantastic, by the way. He is like so great, so great. So those are the 2 nonfiction books I'm reading, and then I am always and forever reading just so cheesy historical romance. That is my version, really, that's my version of trashy TV. I don't watch TV, but every once in a while, I will read a Harlequin romance novel, and I am not ashamed. I do not apologize for that.
There we go. Mine, every time I read a nonfiction book to feed my brain, I reward myself with some silly detective or adventure novel. Sure. And as someone who studied literature at NYU, I know it's shamefully bad writing. I don't care. It gets me out of my business brain. Right. So God bless you. Yeah, get out there. I love those books. I know you go into great detail. So Liana, this is like I don't even know where. It's towards the second half of the book. What does your morning routine look like? That's a big thing for us, launching your day with priority. Can you really quickly tell us, what does your morning routine look like?
Yeah, my morning routine, I'm like crazy about it. And everybody that I know that's a high achiever, that's a high performer, is nuts about that morning routine. So I wake up at 5 a.m. every single morning of my life. So does my husband. He gets up, goes out to the garage gym to get a workout in. I use that hour that he's in the garage gym to write in my journal, have my coffee, set the intentions for the day. What are the results that I want to get? I don't make a to-do list. I make a results list. Then it's time to get my kids up for school, make them breakfast, get them going. And then Dave comes back from the garage where he's been working out, and we high five each other. And then I go get my workout in. I work out 7 days a week. It's not even a question. It's one of the most important things in my life, is just to have that little time for me. Not about looking a certain way, but all about creating the energy that I need in my life. And then we do 5 days a week for 2 years. My husband and I do a morning live stream from 8 to 8:30 on Instagram and Facebook. It's a ridiculous morning show where we talk about our kids and we motivate people, and about 200,000 people a day watch this ridiculous morning show. So that's sort of how we end up our morning, and then get ready and head on into the office.
Love it. And I'm asking one for myself now. In the book, you talked about each year you set like an overall theme for everything that you do. Mm-hmm. Do you still do that?
Yeah. So you mean like for my year?
Right now, like I think about all the content you create, what's your overarching theme right now? Is it this message right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, so when I started 2019, my word was warrior. I choose a word. So I'm big on a word so warrior. So I really struggled at the end of last year with the book became so popular that suddenly everybody wanted to like write a mean article or because it's clickbait, right? And I really struggled with that. And I thought, girl, so this is how I talk to myself. You are either going to have to get strong enough to let this fall off your back, or you're not going to be able to do this work. And for me, the word warrior was about being tough enough to go into battle and do it, and not letting that hit me. So I really got focused on, that's why I'm so obsessive about working out, is because I think if you can do something that makes you feel physically strong, it makes you feel emotionally strong. So warrior was my word. And then I am preparing for my summer conferences, which is 11,000 women flying in from all over the world, just your homegirl, on stage. So what I'm channeling right now, frankly, is Beyonce. I don't know if you're familiar, Beyonce, Beyonce is my hero. I love her so much, but there's a documentary about her being at Coachella. It's called Homecoming. It's amazing. but Beyonce prepared for 8 months for a 2-hour show. 8 months of prep for a 2-hour show. And that is the level of excellence that I am trying to bring to my life. So Beyonce.
I think is one of my favorite coaches in our world, Tony DeCello, and he's probably quoting someone really wise because he's got like that photographic memory. He was talking about the difference between amateurs and pros, and the pros, a lot of people think they practice until they get it right. And he says, no, they practice until they can't get it wrong. And that's a whole other category.
Ooh, that is so good. That is so good. I love that. I'm gonna take that. That's a good one.
Take it. Have one of your staffers Google it so we don't unintentionally give a quote from like Gandhi to Tony DeCello. Like I don't want to do that.
I just mean like into my heart. That's going into my heart, Jay.
All right, Kaylin, we have time for one more. Do we have anybody that stood out for you? Nope, I just caught her off guard. All right, so I'm going to ask you, if you had one more message in the 30 seconds we have left to share with the huge tribe of folks, your fans, our fans that wanted to hear from you, what would be the one thing that you want them to take away from this and maybe do or just know?
So to have the opportunity to speak to small business owners and entrepreneurs, the one thing that I would love for y'all to understand is that the reason that I am here and that so many people who wanted to do the same thing are not even in the race anymore is that I kept standing back up. Like your willingness to stay in the ring, your willingness to keep going, like most of it's just, can you withstand it long enough to get better so that you can start making progress? So I say that to those of you right now who are struggling, who are feeling down, who are not making those numbers, who are not achieving those goals, stand back up. Like I am not the smartest person. I'm not the most connected. I don't have the most money, but I want it more. And that fire in my belly, that's what gives me the strength to stand back up when I'm feeling weary. So go back to that why and just understand, like, man, you're in the ring and you're taking punches. Us too. We're here. Me and Jay, we're in it with you. We're trying to figure it out with you. We're doing these things with you. This is such an incredible, sacred community of people who are trying to get through and achieve the same thing. So please don't feel alone and please keep going.
Love that. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your gift. I'll come back. I hear agency. I hear accountability. I hear truth and empowerment. Love your messages. You keep doing what you're doing. You keep impacting the world. We appreciate you. I'll encourage everyone on this. Go find her on Instagram, Miss Rachel Hollis. You can tag me and say, thank you, Rachel, for what you're doing. Let's give her some thanks, folks. Thank you very much. And I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah, totally. Let's hang out.
I love it. All right, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back in 1 month. It'll be me and Jeff talking about our Reset Retreat. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you soon.